All right. Hey, you guys, I am Dr. Cade, and I'm sitting here with Coach Kaysen, and we've got a special guest today. We're sitting down with Patrick, who is the headmaster at Grace Lutheran Academy. Patrick is a daddy. He's an absolute gentleman. We got a chance to meet him, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and just was really, really curious about his heart, why he does things the way he does, and of course, the organization that he is a part of. So, wanted to pick his brain today and let him tell you guys all about what he does and help us learn more about his education style. So, Patrick, thanks for being with us, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be on here with you guys to talk about health and education. So, what you guys do is extremely important. So, thank you for having me on.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here. So, why don't we just get like the basic stuff out of the way? So, you have been at Grace for, you said, 9 months,
Yep.
right? And you're also a father to a son. How old is your son and what's his name?
He's a year and 7 months. His name is Riker Lee Steckbeck. So, Riker Lee is the middle name. He's a cute little guy, loves to play, and he loves to play with keys. This morning, he broke the key to my car by playing with the ignition. So, but he's a lovely little guy. So, he's very curious. So, I'll put it that way.
Full boy, all boy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's all boy.
That's awesome. So previous to Grace, where were you guys? I assume it wasn't in Naples, correct?
Yeah, so we are originally from Indiana, and we moved to Florida earlier on, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, just to look for new things. And the whole time I wanted to be a Christian classical school teacher, right? We'll talk about that probably later, but I wanted to be a school teacher and really wanted it bad, but couldn't find anything. COVID happened, and so I was brought to my knees in prayer, begging God for some kind of teaching position. I probably had some limiting beliefs at that time. I didn't think that I had the qualifications to do so. Found out in hindsight I did, but didn't know that. So prayed relentlessly for a particular kind of a school where I could teach the Bible. And God answered my prayer extremely precisely. And so I moved to Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas, without ever seeing the place. My wife and I packed up and we went all the way to Corpus Christi, and I taught there for 4 years. So I taught theology, or the study of God, logic, and rhetoric for 4 years there. And my last year, I also became a school administrator. My wife, for the first 3 years before she had our son, taught right beside me. So she taught literature and I taught theology. So we were kind of stuck back hall. So, and then last year, I saw an ad on the internet that said looking for a teacher for a Lutheran classical hybrid school, which is a lot of ambiguous terms for a lot of people. But I was like, that is exactly what I've been praying for, exact to a T what I've been praying for. And I saw it was in Naples. I'm like, Italy, like, where am I going? But I reached out to Pastor Keith, and he called me, and I knew in the phone call, I'm like, this is a real possibility. Visited, loved the church, loved the area, and so we moved very shortly after. So
That's really, really
Cool.
cool.
yeah.
And you still in love with it just as much as when you initially saw that listing?
Yeah, so I mean, it's starting a school is not an easy thing. So there have been periods of struggle and like, man, am I really called to this? But as of late, now the Lord has, and I prayed to God about this too. Like, God, assure me that this is where I'm supposed to be. As of late, I've been gung ho. I mean, just like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I'm supposed to build this school right now, serve the families who come to my school, kind of like a pastor would. I'm not a pastor, but really, think through what are their needs even beyond the school and try and care for them. So yeah, I'm still gung ho. Yeah, still jacked up. So yeah.
Well, you said a couple cool words that we want to talk about,
Okay.
right? Classical and Christian and how that intertwines in the education model. But
Sure.
maybe if we take a step back, you would also mention about, a couple times here about the strength of your faith and how that's guided you in these decisions. You tell us a little bit about your faith and when you found Christ and how that's turned into such a thing for you and your family and leading your family.
Absolutely. Well, I love that question. So I was raised in a Christian home. Um, you know, not probably taught too much about the Bible, but it was always the cultural bearings around me. When I was around 13, I strongly ran away from the Lord at the same time that I was learning more about the Lord, which is a
Hmm.
weird contradiction. So the maximal amount of my rebellion at the same time that I was growing in knowledge, right? I watched a man who had a family of his own, who was very respectable, who I really loved. He was my youth pastor. And I watched him guide his family and care about the things of the Lord. And that opened me up to start reading my Bible. So I started in Leviticus, right? Not the place where you would normally go to start your journey, but I remember reading about sacrifices that these church camps and stuff. And I remember getting to the point, my dad's a believer, my mom's a believer, where I asked my dad, Dad, can I come to church with you? And I knew basically the Christian story, but I went to church with him in this, it was a non-denominational church. And I remember sitting in the back middle, right? Back middle right. And I remember the sermon was on Romans 5:8. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And I was so overcome by the love of God for me in spite of me that I remember literally shaking not shaking, I was squirming in my seat and I can describe the experience. It was, God is so majestic and holy. I'm so sinful, and yet he loves me. And Jesus died for me. And I remember seeing God with the eye of my mind, like, not like, obviously you can't see God because he's invisible, but understanding God in a new way. And I was both drawn to his majesty and also repelled. I was scared. So I was like loving it and also nervous at the same time. And I remember walking out of the sermon, and I looked at my dad and I'm like, that was a pretty good sermon. The understatement of the year. Like, I just got converted. Didn't even know what that meant. God had gave me a new heart. And so I went home and tried to continue in the same habits that I was doing. But I remember thinking consciously, like, I don't think I'm supposed to live like this anymore. And like being like, all right. And then learning the word repentance and like all these things afterwards. So the second thing that happened, though, was a week later, my youth pastor, the one who kind of attracted me to the faith in the beginning, he gave me a study Bible, and he gave me a book called Systematic Theology. So didn't know what that was at the time, but it's an organized way of thinking about biblical beliefs. And I had a 1.3 GPA in high school. I was not your stellar student. I mean, I was bottom of the barrel, did not like the model, found out later a lot of reasons why. But I had a second conversion of the mind. I was just like, everything relates to Christ. And like everything that I didn't like doing, like math and English and all those things, language is important because God, speaks. And math is important because he creates things in a mathematical order. And things like you guys are doing, like the body is interesting and important because the creation of God. And so all these things started to come together. And then I ended up going to Bible college. But I think that answers your question. Now, and then you asked, how does it affect how I lead my family? I don't think I would have been. I can almost tell you for certain, I might have been a father, but I wouldn't have been a decent one before I got converted. And that's the honest truth. I mean, I was on a trajectory that was not good. And, I was just going down, and God saved me. So I don't think I'm a perfect father by any means, but I'm very intentional with my son. I'm very intentional with my family because of what God says in his word of what I'm supposed to be doing. So it doesn't flow from me, it flows from him. But yeah, I think that answers your whole question. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome answer, huh?
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's awesome. So you mentioned that you weren't a good student,
No.
right?
And now I'm a headmaster.
Yeah, me too. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that you now know why. So
Yeah.
what's the difference? Just personally, I don't know. What's the difference between this standard school that, public school that everybody seems to go to, and then a Christian classical education? Or even if you want to get into the hybrid school that you're running now.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was I did really well in elementary school, right? But then when you go through middle school, a lot of men in particular, a lot of young boys in particular, check out, right?
Mm.
And the reason I remember for me checking out, I remember being in the classroom and seeing the ways they would try and motivate me on the walls. And it was like, do this so that you can get a good job, so you can make money, so that you can go to a good college, so you can get a good job, so you can make money. And I remember just thinking, like, so I can get my kids on the same meaningless loop that has no end. I'm like this
We're thinking
consumer,
ahead, huh?
like,
Yeah.
I'm the center of everything loop. And I checked out, just completely checked out. So to answer the first part of your question, classical Christian education puts God at the front of everything, right?
Cool.
So the reason why you're doing everything, whether it's in history or science or math or anything, is ultimately to see the glory of God, right? It's to, like when I was talking about my testimony, I saw God's glory, not all of it, but I saw a glimpse of it, right? And the educational enterprise is principally to get students to see God's glory as a gift of God's grace. So, and when it becomes that's a lot more meaningful than I'm going to go serve myself by making some money and make my kids the same
Right.
selfish reproductions of myself.
An
Now,
attachment.
the second thing I do think part of it was the model, though, like, which ties to hybrid. The model in I'll say it, in public school education is largely determined by a philosophy called pragmatism. right? And pragmatism only values that which is practical in the moment. So how do you arrange your classroom? Well, it's practical. How do you do this? It's practical. And what that really amounts to is money making and job getting, right? It just boils down to that. And we could do a whole thing on pragmatism, but I'll spare you the time. But so the hybrid model, what it does is I'm consciously thinking about things like the body, and I'm consciously thinking about attention spans and how long kids can actually handle being in a room, and what are the essential things that they need to know, right? We only go to school 3 days a week, and then kids are with their parents on Mondays and Fridays. So I'm not trying to teach them everything. Their parents are their main educators.
Mm.
So then what can we do really, really well instead of that? And I think that, you asked it about me. I think that if I would have had someone who gave me a rationale for why it was important that I learned what I learned, and then really thought through the mechanics or the organizational structure of how is this kid going to be able to learn it well, that I would have been way better at school. And I think
Sure.
most successful, especially successful men who struggled in school, I think that's what they could have experienced if they were younger. Because we have a hard time conforming to systems sometimes, and so
Yeah.
we need a model that actually respects who we are and what we are.
So did that kind of click, that change, that contrast between the two models of education that happened from that book, from that mentor, that systematic theology? Was that the book that
No,
kind of
good
started?
question. So the thing that changed from that was I saw the reason for
I see.
developing the intellect,
Yep.
right? The thing that changed on my model was I taught in a classical Christian school, a private school, and it was an excellent school, and I love that school and still love it and pray for that school. But I noticed that a lot of students couldn't handle the 8 to 340 5-day-a-week model.
Yep.
And I thought to myself at one point, I was like, and I don't want my son to be in this. Like I don't, not that school. That school, like I said, was wonderful. I love them and still, like I said, pray for them. But the model, and I would always be at staff meetings being like, maybe we have too many subjects. Like maybe we have too much extracurriculars going on here. Like maybe we need to scale it back,
Yeah.
and focus on the things that are most important. So that was where that shift happened in my mind, was actually in the midst of an 8 o'clock to 3:40 school. Yeah.
So what are your subjects then? Like,
Yeah.
do
So we
you
do.
prioritize subjects?
Yeah, we have a program of classes in what I would consider essentials, right? Math, science, history, English, and then we do Latin and Bible. So those are our classes. And then with history in the upper grades, so we have a 6 through 8. With history, we do Bible in that. So instead of like giving them 8 subjects or 9 subjects or 10 subjects, a lot of times we'll just unite 2 subjects. So very easy for me to teach Bible in history, right? I can teach logic in history too. I mean, we can do it like that. So we'll kind of mix and match, right? And a lot of that is up to the teacher how they want to exactly particularly do that. But yeah, those are our classes. So, and we think those are essential classes.
Yeah,
For our
cool.
model. Yeah.
So we've homeschooled our kids, and Coach Kaysen does as well. And I think the thing that where I struggled in school, and where I also saw, that happening with my children, is the idea of teaching what kids need to think versus teaching kids how to think,
Yeah.
And to me, when we were at, I think, a homeschool symposium, and I heard one of the fathers say that, that was kind of talking about what made the shift for him. And, that really clicked. In our office, our job is always, not to treat the symptom, but figure out why it's happening in the first place. And that is a way that we live our life, right? If there's a problem in a marriage, or a problem in finances, or a problem in behavior, it's always, all right, well, we have the symptom over here, but what's driving that symptom, So it's like this different way of thinking. And so when I heard the dad say that, that really resonated deeply with me, through high school and chiropractic school. I struggled to have a deep interest in what I was being taught, because it was just, here, memorize this. We're going to take a test to see how well you memorize it, So I've taken so much joy in homeschooling our kids, and I think that you do too. My wife, of course, takes the overwhelming load of it, which brings me to, I guess, the question, what is the hybrid part? Because as much as we enjoy homeschool, it's a lot of work. It's very, very difficult. So can you tell us a little bit the hybrid aspect of the school, what you guys have?
Absolutely. So hybrid means different things for different schools, but what it means for us is that we are mixing in-class learning with tutors, right? Our teachers here at school, with homeschooling, right? And so we're a homeschool hybrid. That's one way to think of it. And I like to think of it as in between private schooling and homeschooling. So, like you said, part of the problem we're trying to solve is bearing the burden, especially when kids get into those older grades, myself included, parents would feel like it's a hard time to teach necessarily like physics or chemistry to their kids, right? So there's a point where like with Riker, I'm like, yeah, I could do K through 5. But when we start getting 6, 7, 8 even, I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be your best biology teacher, man. Right? And that might not be the same for y'all, but you get the idea. So what we do is we bring tutors in who are experts in their field, right? And they are sharing the load with parents. But the reason it's hybrid is that the parents are still respected as the primary educators of their home, right? That's the homeschool part. And we're coming alongside them to bear the load. There are also a second reason I think that the model is important is that there are a lot of families who want to homeschool, but they feel very, very scared to take the step to do it. And our model helps them, move towards something more practical for them, right? They're like, I just don't know if I can do it. Well, okay, well, we'll come alongside you and help you in the process. So the model for us looks like kids are at home with their parents on Mondays and Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays, the bulk of the educational time. And we give them guided lesson plans to work on Mondays and Fridays in the subjects that we teach, right? And then they're also free on those days to supplement with any electives they want to, right? We're not doing necessarily, martial arts and gymnastics and all those kinds of things during the school day, but parents have those days absolutely free to do whatever they think is most important for their children. What we do on Tuesdays through Thursdays are subjects we think that every person in America should know to some extent or degree, right? So, and you tie this into what you said about learning how to think well, not just, you were talking about the necessity of thinking well, right? Not just regurgitating information. So our model is classical, and part of that model is teaching students what are called the liberal arts, right? Not talking about a political party or anything like that. Liberal arts just means the arts of the mind, right? So as the mind is not completely, but somewhat free with respect to the body, right? These are arts of the mind that teach you how to gain wisdom and also think well, right? So the words, we have 3 of them for language, for example, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So our students are taught primarily, and that's the main goal of classical education, how to think. So I think that ties together with what you were saying earlier.
Can I ask just a review of that real quick? So you guys, with your model, are solving, a couple different problems, and we kind of started again with the burden of parents, right, being full-time, right? And what are the other problems that you guys feel like you're solving and solving well? Just in review.
Yeah. So the burden's one. The second one is, so you have existing families who are homeschooling who are feeling that burden, who we can help come alongside and shoulder that burden. For families that are scared to move into something more like homeschooling, we help them make that transition too. And then the third thing that just goes over the whole thing is just exhaustion, right? I mean, just the exhaustion of the various school systems, right? We're attempting to be a solvent to that. The fourth thing I would say that I hear parents say the most that we're solving, it was just kind of, obviously we're a Christian school, is people are nervous about the moral trajectory of classrooms. And when they come to our school, they know that we are we're a conservative Christian school. We're not going to have any of that craziness. And I could mention what it is, but I think we all know already, right? There's only 2 genders, these kinds of things, right? We're pretty explicit about that too. I mean, we're not trying to hide it. We're not trying to be flamboyant either. It's not like, it's not a presidential rally or anything like that, but it's something that parents deserve to know at the outset. Like, this is where we stand. They're not going to hear anything like this. So I would say all 4 of those problems were in some way, shape, or form attempting to solve. So
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So 3 days a week,
yep.
Right? And how long are those days?
8:30 to 2:30.
Awesome.
And one of the things that we're always talking about, is I guess the health side of things in relation to education, right? So, things like food and activities and stuff, and obviously what they're learning about those topics and more in regards to health and how God created us. Now we have to be, working with those timeless principles of how God made us. How are you guys incorporating that, if anything, I guess, into the education process?
We're at the beginnings of our school, but we have a deep philosophy, right? So our philosophy, the principle in classical education is called gymnastic, right? It's not gymnastics like flips and stuff like that, but the principle is called gymnastic. And basically that is a holistic view of the body, right? We want to be concerned with the body at every level of education. So it's not as though you just go to a health class and that's over here, or you go to a gym class and that's over here. It goes down as small as things as how the desks are arranged, what kind of material they're made out of, how
Wow.
much sunlight they're getting, right? All this stuff is a concern for us, right? And it's something that I'm not in the health field by trade, but it's something I'm very concerned about, both, for our students and for my son. So we have a no sugar policy. That would be an example of one of the ways we've applied this. Yeah, it doesn't do anybody any good. Doesn't do them good for their learning. Doesn't do parents any good, teachers any good. We incorporate probably a lot more breaks for exercise than other schools do. And I have a long-term goal to, just like you would set up your educational goals for when this kid graduates in 12th grade, this is our goal for their mind, but to do the same thing with the body, right? Like I want them to be Spartans, kind of a thing when they graduate. So we're classical, which largely means that we take inspiration from the classical Greek world, right? Greco-Roman world. So you think like these Spartans out there, fighting the Athenians and all that, right? And one of my favorite guys from that area, that time period, is Plato, right? And Plato's a philosopher. And when you think about Plato, you always think like sitting in an armchair doing nothing.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
this guy's name, yeah, he's just mental. This guy literally was named Plato because he was broad of shoulder, and because he was a world-renowned wrestler who participated in multiple wars. Right? He was a tank. Right? Same with Socrates. Right? These guys were, and when Plato starts depicting his ideal view of education, the two things that he puts at the very bottom are the like very foundation, not bottom in terms of value, very foundation are education of the soul for beauty and education of the body for excellence, which he calls gymnastics. So, like I said, it's that's our core philosophy, and we're working out practically how that goes every day. So, like I said, what it looks like early on, no sugar, kids get more breaks. I mean, we're playing football, we're playing basketball, we're playing foursquare, we're getting busy. And what I would like to do is when kids are getting to 12th grade, we're working back. Okay, K through 2 cohort. What does it look like to achieve our ideal human being by the time that they graduate right now? What kind of stretches do they need to be doing? What kind of food do they need to be eating? And working that all the way back. So that's going to take a lot of work, but that's one of my goals. So
Wow.
One
That's
awesome
really
answer.
cool. That's
Yeah.
really, what are the desks made of?
wood, yeah. So we
Heck
chose
yeah.
wood. Yeah, they sit on wood, and they're in wood desks. And largely, I'll give her the shout out right now. Largely, this is the work of Alex Hill. Okay, so you guys met Alex, and so
Yeah.
She's a
her and I
talented lady.
both believe we have the same health philosophy with regard to
Uh,
education. So our classrooms are designed to be calming in their aesthetic, right? So calming colors. There's an icon of Christ in the room because he's above everything. They sit on wood desks, and it's there's even more we could do. We're moving towards even better things because you're always learning.
yeah.
But yeah, they sit on wood and try and keep the plastic out. So
Heck yeah. That is so cool.
Yeah, Alex is incredible. You guys are a great team.
thank you.
So for those of you listening, Patrick, we both knew when we met you that you were a sharp dude and very caring and very passionate about your faith and about your purpose here, right? But I think this conversation made us fall even more in love with you and have more respect with you. Think that you're an awesome dude, and just to be respectful of your time and the people that are watching. If people want to know more about you and more about your organization, where can they find you?
So you can go to www.graceofnaples.com/academy, and that's on the website academy. You can reach out to me directly, headmaster@graceofnaples.com, or you can even text me or call me at 260-273-0114. That's my personal
Perfect.
cell. I don't mind people calling me. So
We'll make sure to put that in the
Yeah.
description
okay,
too, so
sure.
that people can find you. So again, just in closing, is there anything else that you want people to know or share?
Enrollment is filling up, so if you want to come talk to me, come talk fast. And I really, and gentlemen, to both of you, I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate what you guys do in Naples, and it's wonderful stuff. And yeah, like let's keep getting better and healthy.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to end with.
Let's get sugar out of the school. Heck yeah.
Get it out of here.
Well, we've got a ton of respect for you, Patrick, and a ton of respect for what you and Alex and the team are working on over there, and really creating a brighter future for these kids, for families, for our community, and for this country. We're meant for wonderful things, and this is where it starts, right? And we got to do things. Want a different result? We got to do things different, right? And so it's hats off to you guys for providing such an easy platform and an amazing platform for people to do that. So thank you again for your time, Patrick. You're awesome,
Thank
and
you.
have a blessed day.
God bless you, man.
Yeah, God bless you too. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.